Student, one announcement. You are supposed to enter the meeting only by using official mail ID. Just now I got a request from Shashank. Just I declined the request because you are supposed to use only the official email IDs, not your personal email IDs. That's why. Software process. Students, already we know what are software process activities, isn't it? In the first chapter, we discussed about software process activities. Okay, now we study software processes in detail. As part of that, let us see what are the concepts we are going to cover in this chapter. We're going to cover what are software process models and what are the software process activities that are common across any software process model, then coping with change, then process improvement. These are the subtopics that we are going to cover in this chapter. So first, let us see what is a software process. It's a structured set of activities required to develop a software system. Okay, look at the word structured. It is not just a set of activities, it is a structured set of activities. 1 minute, I think I'm getting some requests. Hello, Lakshmi and Shashank. Next time, if you are logging in using your personal mail ID, we will not allow. You are supposed to use only official mail ID which is given to you. Student mail IDs. Got it? Next time you cannot join like this. This is the last warning for you. Software process is a structured set of activities. Hello.
Hello.
Students, I'm getting echo. Just I'll log out and log in. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Are you getting echo?
No.
No,
No.
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, let us continue. We'll see. Now let us see what are the different software processes that are common across any software development process model. See, sometimes we may select waterfall model, sometimes we may select spiral model, and sometimes we may select some other model. But what is important, there are certain things which are common. That means there are common process activities irrespective of the type of model that we select to develop a software. So those processes are specification, design and implementation, validation and evolution. These are the common processes irrespective of any model. You take any software process model, these things are common. Specification, defining what the system should do. That means you clearly need to document what you are going to develop. We call it as SRS document. Outcome of that is SRS document. Then design and specification. Design means system design. You have to do system design using various diagrams that will give more details about the project to the developers so that they can develop by using the design. And implementation is nothing but coding, to write the coding so that we can implement the requirements. Then validation, checking, it's all about checking whether we have developed what is quoted in the requirements document. So what are the requirements that we have quoted, whether all those requirements are met or not, we have to cross check. That is called validation. Then evolution is nothing but making changes to meet the client requirements or the customer requirements or the customer needs. That is called evolution. A software process model is an abstract representation of a process. It represents a description of a process from particular perspective. A software process model is an abstract representation of a process. Say when I say a particular model contains these many processes. So the software model process model is an abstract of all those processes. For example, waterfall model is an abstract representation of specification, design, implementation, validation, and evolution. I can tell like that. So that's why I can call it as a software process model. Always a process model is an abstract representation of a process. Software process descriptions. See, each software process is having certain description. Say, for example, when I say specification, specification means what are the requirements that you need to document. When we describe and discuss processes, we usually talk about activities in these processes, such as specifying a data model, designing user interface, etc., and ordering of these activities. Process descriptions may also include products, which are the outcomes of a process activity. That means each and every process within the software development lifecycle is having certain outcome, which is called as a product. At the end of each process, we will get a product. Say, for example, after specification, we get the end product. We call it as SRS document. After design phase, we get one end product. We call it as design document. So after coding, we get something, we call it as source code. Then after testing, we get something called as the test report. So that means whatever the phase you consider, each time we have a end product. Each and every process is having a end product. Process descriptions also contains roles, which reflect the responsibilities of the people involved in the process. Say, for example, design process. For example, say one person will be entitled to design the architecture. Always it is a system architect who will design the system architecture. Then based upon the system architecture, others may design. So he will explain the system design and he will tell what are the components that are to be there and how to implement. Based upon that, other designers may design in detail documents like DFDs, flowcharts, UML diagrams, and so on. So that means there will be various people assigned with various roles and responsibilities to work in a particular stage of a project. See, you cannot expect each person to work in each and every stage of the software development lifecycle, isn't it? Because analyst will do the documentation and he will not do any design or coding, isn't it? So like that, every person is entitled to do some meaningful task. Pre and post conditions, which are the statements that are true before and after a process activity has been enacted or a product produced. That means, so we need to have always preconditions and post conditions. So those are the statements that are true before developing the product and after developing the product. That is very, very important. So that means, so we'll consider the preconditions and we'll be having the expectations how it should behave after development. So both should meet. Those are called as pre and post conditions. Both should be true. Plan driven and agile processes. There are two types of processes. One is plan driven and another one is agile processes. First, let us see what is plan driven process. Plan driven processes are processes where all of the process activities are planned in advance and progress is measured against this plan. That means, say for example, your client is coming and telling you that I want this particular software and for this particular purpose, and these are my requirements. Now, what is the condition when we call it as plan driven? If the client gives all his complete requirements in one shot, and you are documenting those requirements, and once again you are showing him, so whether this is correct. Once the client approves that the requirements document is correct and complete, then you start developing the software, working software, and you will deliver in one iteration. That means in one shot you are going to deliver the product. That is called plan driven. That means client is coming to you. So now assume you are the company and client is coming and giving all the requirements to you, and accordingly you are planning how to develop, how many like what are the technical resources required, what kind of human resources required, what kind of software licenses you may have to procure. All those things you will plan, and accordingly like after say for example after each month you can, or after every week you can track the progress of your project. Then such a plan is called plan driven process. Now the final takeaway from this plan driven process is that you can accomplish the project in one go by taking all the requirements. Now let us see what is agile processes. In case of agile processes, planning is incremental and it is easier to change the process to reflect changing customer requirements. That means it's a very lengthy project, especially these kind of agile processes are very much essential for businesses, because the businesses will keep changing their practices and their methodology to operate the business. Hence, the software requires changes very frequently, especially say for example, once in every month it may require changes, and some businesses may expect changes once in 3 months, and some businesses may expect changes once in 6 months. So like that, it all depends upon the nature of the business. But what is important here is the agile process. What the agile process tells, so instead of developing entire project in one shot, you develop projects in terms of increments, where each increment implements very few changes or very few functionality, and it is easier to change the process to reflect changing customer requirements. Say for example, now you have implemented a few features, okay, so that the customer can start his business. Then in the second iteration you will add few more features to that existing software. That is fine. Then after some time he may come and tell you, so you remove these functionalities and you add some new functionalities which are already not there anywhere. So then actually that means what you are doing something to meet the requirements of the business and the requirements of your client. So that is the reason why you are developing software in terms of small increments, and such a practice is called as agile process. And the example for agile process is all business related applications, especially e-commerce applications. In practice, most practical processes include elements of both plan-driven and agile processes, agile approaches. Look at here, in practice, most practical processes include elements of both plan-driven and agile processes. That means most of the projects while developing, they will take some of the concepts from both plan-driven and agile processes. There are no right or wrong software processes. So you cannot say that plan-driven is right and agile process is wrong, or agile process is right and plan-driven process is wrong. It all depends upon who is your client and what kind of application you are going to develop to meet his requirements. So depending upon that only you are going to select the appropriate process. So there is nothing like right or wrong software process. So that's the final takeaway from this. Students, anything you want to ask? Hello? Hello?
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay. Now let us see what are the software process models. Somebody is joining, I think. Charan Kumar Reddy, from next class onwards, you are not supposed to join using personal mail ID. You have to use only official email ID given by BMSIT. Now, this is the last chance to you. First, let us see what is waterfall model. Waterfall model is a plan-driven model. So that means everything we plan at once and we implement the working software. Separate and distinct phases of specification and development. So that we are going to see with the help of diagram. Then second, we have incremental model. In case of incremental model, specification, development, and validation are interleaved, may be plan driven or agile. That means if we use incremental development, so by interleaving specification, development, and validation, that means interleaving means by giving spaces. So suitable time gap between specification, development, and validation, we can do this, and we can follow both plan driven or agile process in case of incremental development. Then integration and configuration. The system is assembled from existing configurable components, maybe plan driven or agile. Say when you are integrating the software by using only the existing components, then you can use either plan driven or agile methodology. So these things you need to keep in your mind, students. Say when it is waterfall model, exactly it is plan driven. When it is incremental model, it can be either plan driven or agile. Both the possibilities are there. And when it is integration and configuration type of project, this is just like bringing so many components and assembling it and making one finishing product. So if that is the case, it can be either plan driven or agile. Both the possibilities are there. In practice, most large systems are developed using a process that incorporates elements from all of these models. Okay, once again I repeat, in practice, most large systems, look at the word large systems. When I say large systems, it contains so many components, and some of the components may be existing components, and some of the components may have to develop for the first time. That means you may have to develop newly some of the components, and whereas so many other components are already existing. So while developing larger systems, so we can use all the concepts from all these three models, that is waterfall model, incremental model, and integration and configuration. Now we'll see all the models one by one. First, let us see waterfall model. So already you have studied waterfall model, and you can see here each block tells you the phases of software development in waterfall model. So the very first phase is requirements definition. Requirements definition means you clearly define what are the requirements and you document it, and the end product is SRS document. That is called requirements definition. So there it can be user requirements, it can be system requirements, it can be domain requirements, functional requirements, non-functional requirements, and so many types of requirements will come here. Okay, all those things are defined very clearly. That is called requirements definition. Then system and software design. Second phase is system and software design. So system design means, say for example, you are designing the architecture of the system. That is called system design. Or you are designing the zero level DFD. That is called system design. Then system and software design. So you need to design using various diagrams, like how the software should look like and what are the subsystems inside that and what are the modules. Okay, the design you have to do, that is called software design. Next comes implementation. Implementation is nothing but coding. Implementation and unit testing. So the developers will write the source code, and whatever the source code that they write, it has to be tested by the developer itself. So that process is called as unit testing. Say for example, you are writing one interface file, you have to test that interface file. That is called unit testing. Another example, let us assume you are implementing one user defined function, and since you are implementing that, you should only test that piece of code. That is called unit testing. Students, got the concept? What is the meaning of unit testing? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Who
Yes,
will do
sir.
unit testing? Who will do unit testing? Developer will do the unit testing. See, within a team, there will be so many developers. Say one particular developer is writing some user defined function, then that has to be tested by that fellow itself. That should not be given for testing to some other developer. If you do that, we will not call it as unit testing. So unit testing means the one who writes the code should test that one. That is called unit testing. Once the unit testing is done, then further it will be sent for integration and system testing. So integration. So within the development time, there will be so many developers who will be developing so many components individually. Then to say, for example, when I say project is a collection of subsystems, and each subsystem is a collection of so many modules, and each module contains so many features or functionality. And to implement one functionality, you may have to write one or more programs. So therefore, like that, development will be done. So why I am telling is that, so if we bring together multiple programs, it becomes one functionality. Sometimes you may write one program and you can implement one functionality. Sometimes you may have to write 2-3 programs and then you integrate, then it becomes one functionality. Like that, similar functionality you bring together, it becomes one module. Then if you group together similar modules, it becomes one subsystem. Like that, you need to integrate all the subsystems. If you integrate all the subsystems and if you achieve communication between them, then it becomes one complete system. So that is called integration and system testing. Okay, so then who will do integration and system testing? It is a professional testing team. It is a professional testing team who will carry out integration and system testing. So how do they do? They'll devise something called as test cases. They'll devise something called as test cases. Using that, they'll check the application by passing the test data. Then they will check, they'll perform integration and system testing. Then the last phase is operation and maintenance. So see, every company will be having something called as the operations team. So the task of the operation team is to take the software, to configure the requirements so that you can deploy the application. That is called operation. And maintenance. Okay, maintenance comes into the picture only after you delivering the working software to the customer. So after that, he may suggest, okay, so even though you have followed waterfall model, you have to give maintenance service to your client, isn't it? So after say for example few years, he may ask you to do some modifications. At the time you need to do modifications to the, see, that's why these arrow marks. Okay, after during that time you may have to do some modifications to the requirements documentation. Since the requirements documentation has changed, the system and software design has to be changed. Then you have to tweak the source code to accommodate new changes. Then once again do the testing, unit testing, integration testing, system testing, everything. Then you deploy. Then you check if it is working fine, then deliver the working software to the customer. So this is called as waterfall model. Now look at here, why it got its name. Here it looks like water is falling from requirements to definition, then to the down step. So from system and software design to implementation. Again, see, this is called, see, this looks like water is falling from, so here to here, then from here to here, and here to here. So it looks like waterfall model. That's why it got its name, waterfall model. And the very important drawback of this waterfall model is that, see, once water falls from top to bottom, that is to down, once the water comes from here to here, water cannot flow from bottom to upwards, isn't it? That means once you finish requirements definition and once you start system and software design, then you are not supposed to do any changes to SRS document. Okay, then after system design, what you do, you will start implementation. So once you start implementation, at that time you cannot do any changes to system design. Okay, so that is the restriction in the waterfall model, and that is also the one of the major setback or major drawbacks of waterfall model. Actually, to overcome this drawbacks only, people started searching for alternative models and they went with incremental development and agile processes. Waterfall model, let us see what are the phases. There are separate identified phases in waterfall model. First is requirements analysis and definition. Requirements analysis. Analysis means the customer will tell you, so I want this feature, I want that feature, everything. You do the analysis and define it. So what is that requirement? You define it. Okay, and you see that you will document all the requirements without leaving any small single requirement. Okay, that will be done in the very first phase. That is called requirements analysis and definition. And accordingly, you will categorize them into various types of requirements. As I told, user requirements, system requirements, functional, non-functional, and so on. Okay, and domain requirements. There are so many types of requirements. So you identify the requirements and accordingly you categorize them. Then make it as a one complete document. That is the end product, SRS document. System requirements specification. We call it as system requirements specification. Then system and software design. So as part of that system and software design, we design the architecture. We will do 0-level DFD. We'll then, to get more insight about the system, level 1 DFD, level 2 DFD, and sometimes so to explain the logic of your algorithm or something, we may in between we may use some flowcharts, and to document the object-oriented design, we may use UML diagrams like class diagram to depict how each one class is related to another class, and to do the data modeling, we can use. Students, any idea how to do data modeling? Hello? Any idea how to do data modeling? ER diagrams, database. So before creating the database, we should have the ER diagram. ER diagram will tell us what are all the entities, means tables that you may have to create, and how to build relationships between different tables and how to create the dependencies. So we do data modeling and other UML diagrams and all we design. That is part of system and system design. Then software design. Software design means we will come up with the GUIs. We'll decide how the GUI should look like, isn't it? So those things, that is called software design. Then implementation and unit testing. Implementation means write the source code and implement the design. Then unit testing. As I told, it is the developer who will develop the code. He has to test his whatever the piece of code that he has developed, he has to test it. Then further it will be sent for integration. See, integration is actually the development task. See, integration comes in. See, there is integration. See, one, say for example, let us assume you are the team lead. Under you there are 3 people. So all those 3 people are developing individual components, and you are also developing few components. So then they'll give it to you. You should check for its correctness. Then you should integrate to make it as one single module. Okay. If they are developing individual modules, you take individual modules from them, then you integrate to make it as one subsystem. That is called integration. Then you, okay, then since you are doing that integration, you check it once. Okay, whether as an complete unit it is working or not. Further, it will be sent for a professional tester. Then he will do integration testing. Okay. See, actually, integration testing at surface level will be done by the developer. Integration testing at the surface level will be done by the developer, but it is the professional tester who will do complete integration testing and system testing, because he will devise test cases such that See, you might have seen so many softwares. If you do some changes in one module, that will be reflected, the changes will be reflected in another module. Isn't it? Say, for example, if you do cash withdrawal, it will affect your overall available balance. Isn't it? Like that. Then system testing. System testing means when you finish integrating all the components of your system, then your system becomes one complete system. Then you pass test cases, you pass test data. Using the test cases, you test the system. So that will be done by professional testers. So integration testing and system testing will be done by professional testers. Then operation and maintenance. Operation includes what are the steps to be taken to configure the system so that you can deploy it, and deploying it, configuring and deploying the system. And maintenance. Maintenance means providing continuity services. So continuously hosting the application and providing maintenance services to the client. That is called operation and maintenance. Say, for example, you are providing operation and maintenance service to your client. See, suddenly what happens, your one of your server goes down, wherein you have installed your client's application. Then, okay, within no time, you should be able to migrate that application to some other standby server so that you can provide continuity, service continuity. So that is all part of operation and maintenance team. Okay, students, here you are expected to know what is the role of operation and maintenance team. If any server goes down, they have to take suitable measures to migrate that application to some other server, so that within very few minutes, okay, that application will be up and running. The main drawback of the waterfall model is the difficulty to accommodating change after the process is underway. In principle, a phase has to be complete before moving on to the next phase. So look at here. So this last paragraph is very, very important. Last point. The main drawback of the waterfall model is the difficulty of accommodating change after the process is underway. Say, for example, you have started system design. Okay, you are in the design phase. Then if you feel like I have to do some changes to the SRS document, that is very difficult because it is waterfall model. So before starting the design, you should make sure that all the requirements are complete and consistent. Okay, then only you should start design. So that's a major drawback. In principle, a phase has to be complete before moving on to the next phase. Okay, that's about waterfall model. Waterfall model problems. Inflexible partitioning of the project into distinct stages makes it difficult to respond to changing customer requirements. See, always waterfall model fails miserably in meeting the changing customer needs. If you have a customer who will keep changing his requirements very often, then waterfall is not at all suggested. Therefore, this model is only appropriate when the requirements are well understood and changes will be fairly limited during the design phase. Okay, when the changes are fairly limited. So even though you are going with waterfall model, but your client will come up with some modification. If it is very small, that is okay. Okay, you can tweak a little bit the SRS document and you can do practically, I'm telling. So that is okay. But if the changes are very complex, then this is not the right model for such a software development. Few business systems have stable requirements. Okay, look at here. Few business systems have stable requirements. That means many business systems have changing requirements, and very few businesses have stable requirements. If you have stable requirements means once you tell these are the requirements, okay, it is fixed. So if that is the thing, then waterfall model is okay. Otherwise, it is not okay. The waterfall model is mostly used for large systems engineering projects, where a system is developed at several sites. Say, let us assume you are developing one very larger system, and you are having a company spread across multiple locations or multiple locations. Then you can give, see here, the basic thing is the requirements are stable. Okay, you know what you are going to develop. Requirements are freezed. So, and you have multiple locations, and so that you can divide the task. Okay, you can subdivide the task, and you can assign one piece to one, say for example, let us assume there are 4 subsystems to be developed. So for one, let's say, and you have 4 locations. Okay, let the first subsystem will be developed by location 1, second subsystem location 2, third subsystem location 3, third subsystem location 4. That means the development is happening at various places, and the requirements are stable, and it's a very larger system, but still you can follow waterfall model. If the requirements are not stable, okay, then it becomes very difficult. Okay, then we don't suggest waterfall model. In those circumstances, the plan driven nature of the waterfall model helps coordinate the work. Because see, when the requirements are stable, it is not a difficult task to coordinate. That's about waterfall model. Next is incremental development. Incremental development means you are developing software in terms of various releases, say release 1, release 2, or version 1, version 2, and so on. And I have told you it supports both plan driven process as well as agile process. That means you can use it when the requirements are stable, and you can also use it when the requirements are changing. In both scenarios, you can use incremental development. So first you need to outline description. So outline description means you define what you are going to develop. Okay, so take the input about what you are going to develop. Okay, for the first increment, for the given increment, what you are going to develop. So that you decide first, then you document it. That is called specification. Okay, so when you design it for the first time, you call it as initial version. Okay, during the first release, you will do the you will prepare the SRS document, that is called as the initial version. In second, after first release, once again, if you are going to prepare SRS document, that is called version 2, next version 3, and so on. So here also, after specification, development. So development means here not only the coding. See, it includes system design, then development, design, and it is called as design and development. Okay, so here you can see here there are so many versions, and this is the intermediate version. So on top we have the intermediate version. Then validation. After development, validation. So specification, development, and validation, these are the concurrent activities. Okay, and these activities can happen in concurrent. Say, what is the meaning of concurrent? Say for example, so after specification you are doing development, so at that time your customer will come and he will tell, so I had forgotten to tell one of the requirement, please include and develop that one also. Then you include that specification in the SRS document. That means update that in the SRS document. Then accordingly you change the system design. Then you start developing that feature. So, and validation. See here, all these 3 things will happen in concurrent. Okay, it is not like waterfall model. If it is waterfall model, until you finish SRS document, the designer will simply waiting for you. You will not be working in parallel. Okay, until developer finishes his task, tester will be idle, will be sitting idle. That is waterfall model. But whereas in case of increment, people involved in specification, development, and validation will be working together. will be doing their tasks in parallel, that is in concurrent. So after validation, so the final version. See here the software is developed in terms of small increments, and at the end final. So say for example, say one customer will come up with very huge requirements, and he will tell you, so I don't want all the requirements to be implemented now itself. So now in the first iteration you implement these many things and you give it to me. Later I'll give you more time, you can develop it remaining things later. Then what you do, you prioritize the requirements. Okay, finally at the last iteration you will give you the final version of the complete software. So that becomes the final version. See here, final version. So that is incremental model. Let us see what are the benefits of incremental development model. The cost of accommodating changing customer requirements is reduced. In case of waterfall model, the cost of accommodating changes is very high. So that is reduced in incremental model. The amount of analysis and documentation that has to be redone is much less than is required with the waterfall model. Because see, you are not going to develop the entire thing at once. So therefore, if at all they come up with changes, very minimal changes you will be doing. Then it is easier to get customer feedback on the development work that has been done. Say, for example, let us assume, so once in every 6 months you are releasing one version. So it becomes very easy for you to get the customer feedback. After 6 months, you get the customer feedback, isn't it? So only for whatever the minimal functionalities that you have implemented, for that you get the feedback, and if there are any loopholes, that you will correct. So by that time you will be parallelly working on second release. Say now, say for example from Jan to June, you have worked on development of version 1. Then by June end you are delivering that software. Say somewhere across, then after June, so in July you have started working on second version of the software. Then say for example somewhere by the end of July you will get feedback from your customer stating that, so there are some small loopholes in some of the subsystems or some of the modules. So now you have to correct those. Okay, those things you have to fix those bugs. Then you have to add new requirements to the second release. Then you give the working software after December. At the December end, you are giving the second release of the software. So now while giving the second release, so you have fixed some of the bugs that were there in the first version, plus you are adding new functionality, then you are giving. Then for the second release, when you will get the feedback, maybe somewhere after January or February, you will get the customer feedback. Okay, like that incremental development happens. Then more rapid delivery and deployment of useful software to the customer is possible. So why or how this rapid delivery is possible? Because since you are developing the system in terms of iterations and you are implementing very few functionalities, so therefore you can deliver the working software rapidly compared to waterfall model. So these are some of the benefits of incremental development. Then the process is not visible. See, the process is not fully visible. Why? Because see, the specification team is working in parallel, then the design team is working, development team is working, testing team is also working in parallel. So therefore it becomes a little bit difficult. Okay, so the process, okay, to see what is going on exactly, isn't it? Say, because some may be working on fixing the older bugs and some maybe some team members will be involved in developing the new functionality, isn't it? Like that. Then the managers need regular deliverables to measure progress. So that is very important as part of project tracking. Managers need regular deliverables to measure progress. See practically how to measure the progress. So for that there are some of the tools called as project management tools. One example is Jira. Jira, Confluence, Wrix, WRIX, Wrix. These are all some of the examples for project management tools. Using those tools, the managers can track the progress, because as and when any team member finishes his task, he has to update, and if you do not finish also, he has to update the status. So using that, the managers can track and they can communicate with the client. So this much work is done this week, like that. And it is not cost effective to produce documents that reflect every version of the system. See, here the only difficult thing is to prepare documentation. Okay, that means very less importance is given for documentation here, because it is not cost effective, because the changes are happening very frequently. And so that doesn't mean that they don't do documentation. They do documentation, but at abstract level. So minimal documentation they do, because it incurs a lot of time and money. Then system structure tends to degrade as new increments are added. See, just imagine. Let us assume in the first iteration you are having only two modules. So the system architecture looks very simple. So in the next iteration you are going to add two more modules. So it becomes okay, little bit complex. And the third, say for example, in the third iteration you are going to add three modules. So now the system has become complex, and the structure of the overall system is getting degraded. See, as the system becomes more and more complex, always the system structure will start degrading. Unless time and money is spent on refactoring to improve the software, regular change tends to corrupt its structure. Incorporating further software changes becomes increasingly difficult and costly. See, students, here we need to understand, unless time and money is spent on refactoring. So refactoring is nothing but improving the existing component. So maybe in terms of improving the efficiency of the code, or maybe improving it in terms of increasing its speed, or something like that. So called refactoring. So already you have developed something, it is working fine, but still you want to improve it. Okay, that is called refactoring. And there are so many ways in which you can do code refactoring. There is something called as code refactoring. Say for example, you have written some program, say for example, the length of the program is 200 lines. It is working fine. So if you do code refactoring, you can re-implement it, say for example, using 80 lines of code, same functionality, and now it is working fine. Now so now you just imagine what is the time required to run the program with 200 lines of source code, and what is the time required to execute the program with 80 lines of source code. So that means the smaller program, the 80 lines program will run faster. That means you are improving the efficiency of your program. So that is called code refactoring. There are so many techniques using which you can do code refactoring. You just Google it. Code refactoring. Google it. So we'll stop it here. Students, answer for the attendance.